Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. Just moments ago, Pope Francis returned to the Apostolic Nunciature, the Vatican's diplomatic residence in Washington, D.C., after a truly historic day. Earlier, the Pope gave his first speech on U.S. soil, weighing in quite pointedly on matters at the heart of American political debates and the 2016 campaign, immigration and climate change most notably. The Pope not only endorsing the president's environmental policies specifically, but urging immediate action. It all took place in the nation's capital, the first stop in the Pope's three-city tour of America. Thousands of well-wishers gathering in the streets this morning, hoping to catch a glimpse of Pope Francis in his little black hatchback Fiat on his way to the White House. He was greeted by President Obama and the First Lady before heading to a welcome ceremony on the South Lawn. The President and the Pope speaking before a crowd of dignitaries, politicians, ordinary citizens, and emphasized areas of shared agreement. Mr. Obama commending Pope Francis for his advocacy on behalf of refugees and immigrants.
You remind us that the Lord's most powerful message is mercy. And that means welcoming the stranger with empathy and a truly open heart. From the refugee who flees war-torn lands to the immigrant who leaves home in search of a better life.
The Pope drawing high praise for addressing the crowd in English, describing himself as a son of immigrants, recognizing the U.S. as a nation of immigrants. But it was the subject of climate change that Francis devoted more time to than any other subject, commending the president specifically for his actions on reducing air pollution and calling for a broader, more urgent response.
Mr. President, I find it encouraging that you are proposing an initiative for reducing air pollution. When it comes to the care of our common home, we are living at a critical moment of history.
Following a crowd-pleasing wave on a White House balcony, the Pope met with the president privately in the Oval Office. 300 American bishops, dressed in traditional garb, gathering to hear the Pope's message at a nearby cathedral, where he told them that abuse at the hands of clergy must not be repeated and encouraged church leaders to welcome immigrants. Now, late this afternoon, another milestone, the first canonization of a saint on U.S. soil, a very controversial one at that, as Francis celebrated a mass that drew tens of thousands of worshipers. Perhaps the most affecting moment of the day, for my money, was this one. As Francis toured the streets of D.C. this afternoon in a white Jeep Wrangler, a little girl managed to get past the security barrier. You see her right there. She was later identified as 5-year-old Sofi Cruz, the American-born daughter of undocumented Mexican immigrants. Police officer at first tried to lead her away, but then Pope Francis called her over to him, recalling the Gospel of Matthew, in which Jesus says, "Let the children come to me," and a member of the Pope's security detail lifting the little girl up to greet the Pope. Sofi, in D.C., with her father and a group of immigration activists, handed Francis a T-shirt and a letter asking the Pope to encourage U.S. lawmakers to pass immigration reform. She later spoke with NBC News and recited her message to the Holy Father.
Pope Francis, I want to tell you that my heart is sad, and I would like to ask you to speak with the President and the Congress in legalizing my parents, because every day I am scared that one day they will take them away from me.
Joining me now, Congressman Luis Gutierrez of Illinois. Well, Congressman, do you expect any road to Damascus moments from your Catholic colleagues after the Pope's pronouncements on these matters?
Actually, I'm eternally, obviously, optimistic and hopeful, especially after today, because, Chris, I have to tell you that I felt that I could not answer sufficiently the charge that has been placed against our immigrant community, and particularly our Latino community, because I could not give the kind of solace and solidarity that our community really needed. It felt so much under attack, and this man comes because we're proud of him, right? We're so proud of him, and through his example and through his words, without directly confronting anybody or speaking anybody, but through his actions and through speaking the gospel as a leader of our church and as a leader in the world, to set the record straight. So look, a lot of people were kind of surprised, right? They said, oh, mostly Latinos. The church is 53% Latino, the Catholic Church. And it's the only part of the Catholic Church that is growing in the Latino community. And so nobody should be surprised. Yes, at the White House today it was a wonderful activity, but when you walked out, you saw our community. And that little girl is an expression of the needs of our community, of our families and our needs. And so, look, you want to argue climate change? I don't. It's happening. We need, global warming is going on. I'm at many times at so difficult, right? As I am challenged by my church, as I find it difficult with the teachings of the church when it comes to women's reproductive rights and the rights of the LGBT community. But can you really argue welcoming the stranger? Can you really argue challenging society to do better for the poor? Can you really challenge someone who says, instead of building walls, we should build bridges and we should have compassion and we should be caring and we should love our neighbor as you love? I don't know how you argue that, and so that gives me hope that I and my colleagues can see a way forward.
You know, it's interesting you note those teachings, the welcoming the stranger, because this is something, you know, a lot of focus on this Pope and how he has shifted the emphasis of the papacy from his predecessor. But in this respect, this is something that there's been broad continuity in the Catholic Church and through the papacy and the Catholic Church here in the U.S. I mean, I remember being in a church basement in Pilsen, in your native Chicago, on May 1st, 2006, the day of the largest mass protest we'd seen since the Iraq War in support of immigration reform, against criminalizing of immigrants. And those are organized in church basements, in Catholic church basements across Chicago, Polish folks and Irish folks and Mexican-American folks. So the church has been a real bedrock of this movement for immigration reform for a while, hasn't it?
It has been, and I believe that this Pope is going to challenge my church to do even better, to find even more Spanish language priests and more Spanish language bishops. The church still has to expand its ability to communicate to our community and to allow Latinos to emerge so that 52, over half of the church in terms of its population is Latino, that we're more reflective in its leadership. And that's why this is so critical at this particular moment. Look, he leads by example. He's much more, reminds me much more of my parish priest than he does of a theologian at the Vatican, as somebody that you go to in times of need. So when my mom and dad came in 1952 from Puerto Rico, and they weren't welcomed in New York City, it was said about Puerto Ricans that we came as criminal element to get on welfare and bringing tropical diseases. All these things were said about my mom and my dad. But even then, Chris, the church was the first one to offer them a coat.
Right.
To the first place, the only institution that was really responding to their needs. But now we have this leader, right, of our church across the world coming and responding.
All right, Congressman Luis Gutierrez. Great, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. A little girl who gave Pope Francis a letter about her undocumented parents lives in Los Angeles, California. In her letter, she described her home as el corazón de la agricultura, the heart of agriculture. An estimated 10 million documented and undocumented immigrants live and work in California, many in the agricultural powerhouse of Central Valley. Our own Jacob Soboroff traveled there to hear from them firsthand.
As a native Californian, you get used to driving up the 5 freeway that I'm on right now in the middle of the most productive agricultural land in the entire world and seeing what I see right here, almost absolutely nothing. No big red barns, no farmhouses, no cute little farm stands on the side of the road, and that is because we are in the center of industrial agriculture in the entire world. But if you look closely enough, hidden in plain sight are thousands and thousands of workers, many of them are undocumented, that live in towns like the one that I'm driving to right now. So what is this place?
It's a marketplace. A lot of farm workers come and they get their burritos here, their beers here, their waters here. A lot of people get their checks today.
Yeah.
So yeah,
come in, maybe cash a check, or
they do come in, cash their checks.
Yeah.
A lot of folks are undocumented, so they don't have access to a bank, so they rely on these local markets that charge them about 10%.
Who was working today?
¿Quién trabajó hoy? Yo.
Everybody was working today on Sunday.
All week long they work 12 hours. Sundays, this is the only entertainment they have.
He said if the job was easy, American people would be doing that job. Who's Catholic?
¿Quién aquí levante la mano que es católico? Todos.
Todos? Todos? Do you think that the Pope cares about you guys?
Como católicos.
Of course. Yeah.
Y es hispano.
And
He's Spanish, yeah. What do you want to hear him talk about when he comes to the United States?
Que le diga al Trump que se calme poquito, que no nos tire tanto.
To tell Trump to calm down.
Yeah.
No todos son terroristas.
Not everybody's a terrorist.
So basically the workers up here are industrial workers. They live right there in the trailers. The factory is this right here, the almond fields behind me. Essentially, it's a company town. Hola. Hola. Buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes.
Jacobo.
Luz María Salgado.
Él es reportero con el canal NBC.
Pues no me cabe más si no tuviera más.
She said her room doesn't fit more icons, otherwise that she would put more icons up. The Pope is coming to the United States. Are you going to be watching on television or listening to what he says?
Lo bueno, nos dejan traer radio en el campo.
Luckily-
Y pues podemos escuchar.
Luckily, they let us have radio at work, so we're going to be listening to what he says on the radio. And then when we come back from work, we're going to be watching him on TV.
What do you hope that he says, the Pope, this week?
O que les llegara al corazón a todos los del Congreso.
So she hopes that the Pope brings a message of family unity and hopes that he encourages Congress to act on immigration reform so that she can not only help herself here in this country, but her parents who are in Mexico, and to progress in this country like everybody else.
What do you hope for your kids?
Me dé licencia de juntar un dinero.
One of her biggest dreams is to someday collect enough money to purchase a house of her own and to legalize herself and her kids.
That was MSNBC's Jacob Soboroff on assignment for us in the Central Valley of California. Great piece.